Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, we use workshops and exercises to learn about AWS services. You can go to aws-dozo.com website where we publish our workshops and tutorials, and you can use those tutorials to build certain scenario, and when building the scenario, you learn about AWS services. Today, we are going to talk about Amazon Kendra, which is used to build enterprise level search engine. Okay, so let's get some introduction about that. So as I mentioned earlier, Amazon Kendra is used to build enterprise search services. So in organizations, you have your data spread across different data sources. It could be SaaS platform, it could be file systems, it could be into different databases or on portals like SharePoint. And organizations look for solution which provides natural language based search capabilities across these data sources. And Amazon Kendra helps in that. With Kendra, you can build a search service using your data sources as the sources of your no your of your information, of your content, and then you can use natural language based search capability, or you can like make a natural language based query to search your data spread across various sources. So let me quickly explain you how exactly it works. So basically, what you do with Kendra is that first you go and create one index, and one was you can think index as a focal point or the center point where a search queries go, and then it finds data across various sources. So I will build it and I'll slowly explain it or in the coming minutes. But let's start with you start with one index, and then you put various data sources behind this index. So your data sources could be your data inside SharePoint sites or into your SaaS platform or various other sources, and you configure each of these sources as the source of the content you want to search into. And once you have configured the data sources, then you do something called sync of the data sources. And when you do the sync of the data sources, what happens is that your data sources are scanned and they are indexed for the search purpose. And it is pretty exhaustive, right? For instance, I'm going to show you Salesforce.com as one of the data source for search engine, and there actually you can look into objects, you can look into knowledge articles, you can look into attachments also. So really you can go into the different data sources you have, you scan them, you index them, so that when the query comes for the data through the index, Kendra knows where the possible locations of such information is in the widespread of data sources. So once you have configured your data sources, you have crawled them, then you go ahead and build a search application. So you can create a search application which will simply provide interface to make a natural language based query, which then passed to the index, and then index simply used the crawled index data to tell you where the search content is spread across the data sources. Now, this indexing you have to keep doing time to time. So generally, people scheduled indexing. You can do once in a day, twice in a day, or once in a week, depending on how quickly your content get refreshed. And then each time indexing runs, it keeps building the index for the new content or change content, so that your search is always latest and relevant. So that's how Kendra works. So using similar philosophy or how it works in mind, we are going to implement a scenario today. And in this scenario, we will configure Kendra with two data sources. One data source is Salesforce.com. So we have a trial version of Salesforce account configured, which we're simply going to use as one of the data source. And for this example, we will enable search on account, lead, case, and contact. Then, just to demonstrate that various data sources can be configured behind the Kendra, then we'll use the second data source as S3. And there we have simply dumped in some sample PDF files with records similar to Salesforce, so that you can see that when you search for some content, actually it looks into all the data sources behind Kendra to provide the search result. So we create an S3 as a data source, and we'll simply upload some sample files over there as a source search content. And then after that, we will start the search. And for this search purpose, actually Kendra comes with built-in search console. We are simply going to use that search console to search the content behind the index. So that's what we are going to build today. In order to build this use case, we have created a workshop, and this workshop is uploaded on aws-dozo.com. The description or the URL of the workshop has been provided in the description box of the video. And when you start this workshop, you will find that it provides in sequence detailed instruction about how to configure Kendra and the backend services to build such a search engine. Okay, so feel free to click on this link and run this workshop at your own pace. But now I'm going to walk you through the steps of this workshop to show you how this workshop can be used to build this kind of search engine, which is sourcing its data or content from S3 and Salesforce.com. Okay, so let's jump onto our website. So here is the AWS-dozo.com website, where we have opened out of all workshop a workshop that talks about configuring Kendra, and this is the scenario we are talking about. So let's start the workshop. So click on the link to start the workshop, and you can see here that you have to follow these 10 steps to perform this workshop or to build this scenario. So let's start with that. So let's go to the very first step, prerequisites. Basically, there are two prerequisites over here. One is that you should have an AWS account where you have administrative rights to be able to configure AWS services for this usage scenario. The second requirement is to have a Salesforce account, and if you have a Salesforce account, then it's good enough. Otherwise, what you can do that you can use the link over here to create a trial account. And in this case, what we have done is that we have created a Salesforce Developer Edition trial account to be used as a backend system for the search. And we have choose Developer Edition for a purpose because in order to configure Salesforce as a backend system, it needs to have API enabled on the Salesforce, and Developer Edition comes by default with API enabled. So we have created simply Salesforce Developer Edition trial account. So two things, you need AWS account and Salesforce. So once we have this, here we have describing what we are building, and I have already talked about this, so I will not repeat again. So let's move on to the next step. And there we go and create one index. So you go to Amazon Kendra and you create one index, and this index will give name called Dozo Kendra index. And then when you do this, actually it also creates a role. So this is the role which Kendra is going to use to be able to talk to the backend system. And this rule needs to have certain permission for that. In fact, so we will do that in the coming slides. But what we are doing here is that we are creating the index, which also creates a role behind the scene. So once you have created the index, and here talking about what edition you want to choose for the index creation, and there are two choices here. We are using developer one because we don't want to use this thing for production. It's just for a trial, and developer edition is sufficient for that. So index is created, takes some time to create the index, roughly 30 minutes. So yeah, you might want to launch it and then probably go for a tea, coffee break and come back and your index should be ready. So next one is configure the role. So as you create the index, it also creates a role, and this role is what Kendra is going to use in order to search all the backend system or do other necessary thing with the other AWS services. So this role should have permission. In order to simplify it, we have simply provided it power user access, but really depending on the case to case and what kind of backend system you are going to deal with, you might want to provide a very specific permission to this role. In this case, to keep it simple, we are simply adding power user access policy to this role. So once our role has been configured for the Kendra, now we can start adding the data source. So first data source we are going to add is Salesforce. But in order to add Salesforce, we need to enable certain things inside Salesforce so that API-based call can be made to the Salesforce to be able to fetch the content information for the indexing purposes. So let's see what we do. So in Salesforce, you go to the Salesforce account, you log in over there. In this case, I mentioned earlier, we are using the trial version of the developer edition. So there we go, we log into Salesforce, then we go to setup, and then we go to the apps under build and create under the setup. And when you go there, you have to create one connected apps. Okay, so you click on the connected apps. You provide some nice name to the app. So you have to provide one email address here, and then once you have configured that, you create the app. So when you create this app, actually what happens is that it takes roughly 2 to 10 minutes, depending on how things are going at the Salesforce at that point of time. But it creates the app. Now, when the app is created and enabled, then you will have two important information over here. One is called consumer key and second is called consumer secret. These two information you have to copy because you need these two set of information in order to configure Salesforce as a backend system in Kendra. So you have to copy these two secrets or these two credentials. And then you also need a security token for the logged in account. So you are going to use a certain user account to talk to Salesforce, and you need a security token for that particular account. So in this case, I'm using trial account. I have logged in using trial account. So for that trial account, I go to my personal settings. I go to click on my reset my security token, and when I do that, it sends me the token information over email, which I simply make note of at some good place. With this, my Salesforce is ready. Now I can go to the Kendra and add this as a backend system inside my index. So let's do how we do that. So we go back to our Dojo index, Dojo Kendra index we created earlier, and we click on add data source. When you ask for a data source, there are multiple different sources will be shown to you, but you are interested in Salesforce at this point of time. So you click on add connector for the Salesforce. It will ask you, hey, tell me some good name for this data source. You provide the name, and then you provide the URL of the Salesforce. You also provide the role which Kendra is going to use in order to make all the backend calls. And then on the next step, you provide authentication information. So in authentication information, remember you created earlier apps and you also fetched security token from the Salesforce. That information you have to configure over here and save it. When you save it, what happens is that this information is stored inside Secret Manager in AWS. And Kendra will simply use our role-based authentication to talk to the Secret Manager and fetch the information in order to talk to the Salesforce. So you save this information once, and then this information is stored into your secret manager, and simply Kendra will use it whenever it wants to talk to it. So information is pretty much encrypted and secure inside your secret manager. Okay. Once you do that, then you provide your crawl settings. So you say, okay, out of all the accounts, sorry, out of all the objects, which objects you are interested in. And in this case, we are saying, hey, we are interested only in account, lead, case, and contact. You can see here. You can also go. You can also look into knowledge articles or even to chatter feeds. And chatter feed is kind of social media feed you can use inside Salesforce. Or you can also look into attachments, to be honest. Yeah, so it's pretty powerful. Then you go ahead and configure the sync schedule. That means how frequently this data should be indexed for the search purpose. So we are running here on demand because we are simply doing a test. Otherwise, you might want to produce, you might want to configure some schedule over here, like once in a day or once in a week, depending on how frequently your data changes. So once you have created your backend system, what you do is that you have to click on the sync button. So because your backend is configured, but it has not been indexed. So Kendra index doesn't know if any search request comes to it that where does it have index of such information across different data sources. So you have to click on the sync now button over here to index this backend system, and you click on that and you wait till the indexing complete, and you can see that the indexing has successfully completed. So now Salesforce is ready as a backend system for the search purposes. But we want to add another data source over here, and that is S3 bucket. So let's go and prepare S3 bucket for that. So what we do, we go to the S3 bucket, we create an S3 bucket called AWS Kendra RTS. It might happen that you, when you're doing this workshop, then this bucket name is not available. And in that case, to be very honest, you can use whatever bucket name is available and simply use that name over here. So once we have done that, we are uploading some sample files to that. So I have provided a link here to able to download some sample file. But if you, for this tutorial, if you want to use your own file, you can upload your own files over here and use that for the search. So simply in this step, what we're doing is that we are creating an S3 bucket and adding some sample file as a content to the bucket. Now we have to configure S3 as a data source. So for that, we go back to our index again and say, I want to add a data source. In this case, you say, I want to add an S3 as a backend system. You give this data source a nice name called Dojo S3, and then you provide the path over here, which role I can access to access this S3 bucket. That means, and this is the same role which index created in the beginning. So if you want this role to access to this S3 bucket, you have to configure that access. Yeah, and that's what we did also in the beginning. We gave a lump sum power user access so that role has access to S3 bucket as well. And then you also provide a sync schedule like you did for the Salesforce one. And then your data source is created, and then you start syncing again. And when you start syncing again, the index will crawl your content inside your S3 bucket. It can go through like a whole folder structure inside bucket, but right now our data is pretty flat. We have bucket and files under that, or objects under that. So you finish your sync. Now your S3 data is also indexed. So your both Salesforce and S3 data are indexed. Now it is a good time we can go and test it. And in order to search our test, Kendra provides a search console for the testing purpose, and we are simply going to use that. So let's go and see how it works. So we click on test the search, and in the we go back to our index again, and you can see that there is a search console for testing purpose only. And we click on that search control, which provides a UI like that. So very much like any search console you see. And then we are, for this example, I'm searching for grand hotels, and then it is looking the existing the occurrence of grand hotels across the two data sources we have in the backend. So one is your Salesforce, another your S3 bucket, and you can see that. I mean, right now this data is coming from Salesforce, this data is coming from S3, this data is coming from S3, and you can see that it has even gone into the PDF files and indexed data inside PDF file. So that's pretty much how it works. When you make the search, it is using the index of the source content behind to find the existence of your source data, and then simply pointing you in your search result where does the data exist. Now, that's why this syncing is very important, because suppose your data changes very frequently, then you should sync very frequently. If your data changes rarely, then you should sync at a lower frequency. So that's how the search works actually. So next step is actually to go and build an application which can use this search. And for that there is a link which provides how to create and deploy such application. I'm planning to cover that into some separate exercise. Not today. Today was to more discuss how Kendra works and how you can configure data source as a backend system. So that very much finishes the workshop. The next step is to clean up the resources so that you don't incur any cost after this workshop is over. So that for that you go to the last step, which is cleanup, and you delete your index, you delete your data sources, your S3 bucket where your data was stored, and then you also delete the role which was created for the index. And remember that when we configure the credentials for Salesforce access, those credentials were stored inside secret manager. So you go to secret manager console and you delete that secret as well. And with that, everything is reset. Your account is back to where you started before the beginning of the workshop. So hope you like that, and please follow the workshop, and it will really help you build this scenario, and you'll get a good experience of how to use Kendra to build enterprise level search engine within the organizations. Similar to this exercise, we have our workshop. We have many other exercises and workshop. I highly encourage you to simply go and run those exercises and workshop to learn about other AWS services. Thank you. That was all in this workshop. If you like this, please click on the like button. Click on the subscribe button if you want to know more about such videos from us. We generally try to publish 1 or 2 videos per week. And if you have any feedback or suggestions or remarks for us, you can provide that on our YouTube comment section, or also you can click on this contact us button and provide information over there. Hope you like it. Thank you very much for your time. Have a nice day. Bye bye.